a scientist.
Suffice it that the blood of 1,000 men and women was spilled within these walls. Limbs twisted and broken, eyes gouged from bloody sockets, flesh burned black.
Please. You await the dead. In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes. What you have to realize is that we're all just a mouse that a cat has by the tail.
The number you have reached, 911, has been changed to a non-published number.
Warning, the following show contains conservative posturing, radical Christian ideas, and may offend pagans, Wiccans, Islamic fundamentalists, and other unenlightened individuals. Callers and guests may be subjected to brash and offensive comments by the hosts and any other type of bullying tactics available. But that's okay. We know why you're here.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
Tonight is April 13th, 2014.
You're listening to World the Unexplained. Tonight, we're expecting to...
Tonight.
We're expecting to have author Cris Putnam on the show. And Cris is a best-selling author and Christian apologist. He's got a master's degree in Theological Studies from Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary and a certification in Christian apologetics from Biola University, as well as a BS in religion and mathematics. And also, he's a math guy. He's recognized for his expertise in the area of biblical prophecy and other prophetic traditions. I'm getting all this from the website, by the way. He's been interviewed on Prophecy in the News. He's been on Countdown to the Apocalypse on the History Channel, and in Canada for the show I Prophesy, I Prophecy, the Future Revealed. He's appeared on major radio programs and podcasts across the country. That's why he's coming on ours. And he's a member of the International Society of Christian Apologetics, the Evangelical Philosophical Society, and the Tau Sigma National Honor Society. He teaches his local church and presents at various Christian conferences in the U.S. and Canada. And he's got a couple different websites. Apologia. Thank you.
I think.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And he's also got this Exo-Vaticana that we're going to talk about for the first hour of the program tonight. And then we're going to talk about his new upcoming book, which he'll be getting into. There's some good stuff out there on the internet. He was on Sid Ross at Supernatural, where he talked a little bit about this with his co-author. I believe that Tom Horn co-authored this book with him. I'm not sure. We'll find out here in just a second. But I know Tom Horn they've done some work together. And those of you that listen to our show will remember the interviews that we did with Tom Horn years ago. So it should be a good show. Do we have him, D? Huh? And we do not have him yet. Okay, so we'll talk about other stuff.
Sorry, though, when I read your text about who was on today.
Oh, yeah.
I only read the first part of it, the last
Pope. I'm having the last Pope on the show tonight, Chuck.
The very last one. Wait a minute. Is it the last one, like in the series, like the guy who just stepped down, that Pope?
Yeah.
Or the very last one? And how do we...
I just got
a minute or so until I saw
wow. This is some awesome, powerful stuff here. We're actually, how did Scott reach out to the Pope?
Seriously, how did I learn how to speak German?
Yeah, I'm just like, hey.
And Latin.
When Jay was telling me about it, I thought we were having the guy who hacked Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Apparently there's a guy named Cris Putnam that hacked Facebook, yeah.
Oh, okay, well, that would have been kind of cool, too. Either way, we win. Either way, we win, Scott.
I see that. So, anyway. Keep your emails piling in here, worldtheunexplained@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on the contact side of it on our page. That'll send it to the same email address.
Yeah. What's the number?
Our number is 877-722-7382. That's toll free, 1-877-SCARE, the letter U, the number 2. And it'll just, as soon as you call that number, hit the number 1 button, and that'll bring you right into our soundboard, to our live show.
I just now wrote that number down. So
did you? Okay, that's good. Because we always forget it. How's your weekend?
It was terrible, man.
I'm sorry.
I lost everything. I lost all kinds of stuff.
I lost everything.
Your house burned?
Yes. I came in on a horse. My mind is gone flat out. I'm straight up crazy now.
It looks like your radiator's about to go in your car.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah.
Sorry, I brought it up. You know, he comes in bringing this half gallon of water with him, and I'm going.
It was moonshine.
Are you? That's what D's like. Is he bringing liquor to the show?
Yeah,
like, no, he's
I
not.
do. Actually, you guys, it's a fun fact. I'm bringing moonshine when I come in here.
And then we said, I'm like, is he bringing all that to drink? I mean, I know he's a thirsty guy, but I mean, my lord, I mean, that's just a half gallon of water to hydrate.
It's one of my hobbies to sit there and just guzzle gallons of
water. Yeah,
especially if it's ice cold.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
in the winter,
I brought donuts.
You did.
Yeah,
to counteract my healthy aspect of drinking ice cold water.
Yeah.
No, I lost my phone and I lost my keys and I lost other things. I've just been losing crap all weekend. And it really has been driving me insane. And unfortunately, I can't blame it on any kind of stupors or alcohol.
I think you need a European handbag. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, sign me up for that. What I know, Scott. You're about to.
I would call it a purse, but you know.
Well, you're indecently propositioning me. It sounds like
you're a European hand.
Well,
man.
the hand, European hand, and then you
bag.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So anytime you add the word European, it somehow sounds smuttier, like the word Swedish. Nope. If you add the word Swedish in front of things,
it's odd. Why don't you shoot him an email, D?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of I don't know. But at the same time, you know, if you say something's from Europe, it's fancier and classy, you know?
That's only with the Obama administration. They want us to be the new Europe.
Oh, man. You've been to Europe. It was a cool place, man.
Yeah, but, you know, this is America, man. You know, that's why we're different. We're better. We beat everybody's butt, dude.
Yeah, did we?
We're the king dudes, man.
Did we really win?
We did. We won.
What about that War of 1812?
Very manly to pull out.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only thing is like
we didn't win that War of 1812, Scott.
Well, you know, the only thing the only thing is this. I mean, you know, they want us to get out of the Middle East, and I understand that. You know, I mean, maybe we should. I don't know.
Monroe Doctrine, straight all the way, man.
We what?
We lost the basic physics stand.
Oh well.
New York,
there we go.
Now we're in Romania.
Yeah. Oh, Romania. Strigoi.
I would like to go to Romania. I think
I know Strigoi. I know that word.
It's huge there.
Is it? You would know.
I think it's one of the number one exports.
What is?
Sex industry.
Fraud.
And
oh, really? That's interesting. You know, it's like Cambodia used to be the number one exporter of heroin.
No. Wow.
Like something heroin. I don't know. Anyway, it's just been crazy. Oh, I'm sorry. Have you ever been to Fort Dobbs?
No.
Fort Dobbs is in Statesville, North Carolina, and it's actually a really cool place. That they had this thing going on this weekend where like they had the military reenactors going up there, and they reenacted this battle that happened during the French and Indian War. There were like people, you know, talking about Cherokee culture. I mean, honestly, me and Cora, you know, we were there only probably about 2 hours, but it was probably the most informative 2 hours I've ever spent at some kind of little, historical place. It was really crazy. I learned how they dyed indigo. I learned, you know, where colonial games and money came from. I mean, seriously, like from start to finish, it was just informative. And you got to be outside, and it was a fairly nice day. And, you know, but it's right up, the fort actually doesn't exist anymore, but they have archaeological evidence from numerous digs there. Anyway, that was actually a really interesting bit of history.
I got let down last weekend. I did not get to see Dealey Plaza.
Oh, that's right. You went to Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas. Did not get to see Dealey Plaza. The only day that I could go that I wasn't in class, it was raining and it was like 47 degrees and it was just, it was pouring down rain and it was cold.
Get yourself a 10-gallon hat, man, and put it on.
And I just, it's 30 minutes away from where I was. I was in Grapevine, Texas, so Dallas itself is 30 minutes away, and I had to take a cab and I didn't have a poncho or an umbrella, and it had just been a real pain.
Weren't you at a children's themed water park?
I was. Yes. That, my friends, is the best way to if you've ever thought about having a child, spend a few days at the Great Wolf Lodge. Those thoughts will never come to you again. You're like, no, I don't want to be dad. Ever want to be a daddy at all. That cured it real quick, man. Yep, just took it all right out. No, man. They're hundreds of them. They're like little people, man, and they're terrorists. They're little terrorists. Is what they are, man. They just terrorize things. You know, you've got a couple of them. You do too. I
Throw
mean,
each other under the bus.
yeah, that's horrible. How do you deal?
Burn each other in a second.
How do you deal with that?
Oppressive
Guys,
tyranny,
I mean,
Scott.
All you guys have kids except me. I'm the last one.
Oppressive tyranny.
I'm the last of the Mohicans here.
You clutch the fist tightly, Scott.
That's what Jerry Spence told us.
You're the last of the Mohicans.
We are the last of the Mohicans. I thought that was very.
Why? Why were you?
Just because of all the trial lawyers are, they're weeding out, man. There ain't a lot of us left anymore.
Because and trial lawyers
They're
are brave
lazy.
and fearless, and
Yeah,
most
they're-
lawyers are callous and just want a whole lot of money.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I think so. I don't know. They just don't seem like they want to fight for anything anymore. A lot of people don't. They give up.
Chickens, bunch of chickens, Scott.
But really, it was a very powerful thing. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, seriously.
Learned some stuff.
He's one of your number one.
Attorneys, yeah.
Well, no,
big fan.
role model.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his work. He's really good. And it's you could tell just going to his hearing him speak and lecture, he's just so compassionate and so selfless when he goes after.
Yeah.
He's going after big corporations, evil corporations that have done something wrong to people, or he's defending someone charged with a crime that they didn't do. Very powerful speaker, and very selfless. I was very impressed with him.
No. Well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. At the Children's Water Park.
At the Children's Water Park.
What are you doing at the water park?
He had it there. The Trial Lawyers College decided to put it there because they wanted it to be more of a family-oriented type of event, so that, people could bring their families and have a little time, kind of like a little mini vacation.
Did
while they were doing stuff.
your cohorts actually bring their families?
I have no idea. I don't know. All I know is that I was there. It's so horrible because you can't leave. I mean, you can't leave because there's nothing around.
Wait a minute. Okay, I was about to say you can't leave.
But there's nothing nearby. The town of Grapevine's nearby, but you'd still have to take a cab or something like that.
So what's near Grapevine? I mean, when you step outside that
There's
crazy
nothing,
water park,
man.
I mean, is it flat? Are there tumbleweeds, cactuses?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's flat. It's flat, but I mean,
is there like dust clouds and?
It's Dallas Fort Worth. That's all I can say.
I know nothing about that place.
I know it's flat.
Yeah,
Flat and
that's
boring.
a very good way to describe it.
It's flat.
That's lame.
And
wow, no wonder Texas.
they have monstrous tornadoes that go through there because they're in the middle of Tornado Alley.
Yeah, but they're Texas.
And all the people that live there in Dallas are like, no, we don't get tornadoes here. I'm like, dude, you're in Tornado Alley in Texas. You get tornadoes here. They're like, nah, we don't really get them here. I'm thinking when I say, oh yeah, that's what they say. That's Oklahoma. I'm thinking maybe the reason they say we don't get them here is because something that you and I would consider to be a tornado. I don't know, F1, F2, F3.
Yeah, that's like, that's a thunderstorm.
Oh no, that's not a tornado.
We don't ever get snow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
snow. It's only you only got 12 inches. That's not snow.
Like the winter storm that we had. This winter was like, oh, it's a blizzard. But people
Atlanta sure felt that, didn't they? God, can you imagine?
What?
Wow, Atlanta. Where they stopped the traffic, people were sleeping in their cars over a little ice. Yeah, I mean,
What?
crazy. Yeah,
That's
people stayed
lame.
overnight in their car. You didn't hear about this?
No, man.
You don't read the paper, do you?
I don't.
Chuck, are we the only two people in the room that read the paper? Well, with the exception of D. D reads the paper.
I don't read anything anymore. Actually, I refuse to read.
Okay, you just don't keep up with
That's bad.
world events.
Montana
Yeah,
showed me a picture from Facebook.
yeah.
He's standing on the side of the road, and I'm not kidding. There's like a 4-foot high drift worth of snow. His
that-
text was like, "You think you guys have snow?"
Yeah, I mean that's what they get. They get drifts of snow, man. They're huge.
We should just go back to riding horses. That's what I think. Get rid of the cars, ride some horses.
Yeah.
If I could afford it, I would have a horse. And I'd have to leave about
Mr. Ed.
3 hours. I would not name him Mr. Ed. I'd name something cool like Bucephalus
Would he talk to you
or
though?
something. Well, in my mind, once I reach level 5, he'll be able to talk to me.
Level 5.
Yeah, well, that's when the mounts can speak to you through empathy, and then of course they level up when you level up. So once I got to level 8, they're like a 6-hit die creature, maybe even a 7-hit die creature. What's Chuck talking about?
When someone says level 5 to me,
Like 70 hit points.
Seriously, yeah.
someone says
I got a
level
7
5
hit point. Thank you, Chuck, for backing me up here.
someone says level 5 to me, I either think that you're a DWI first offender, you're at level 5,
Oh, that's lame.
or you're at felony prior record level sentencing grid level 5, which is really
level,
bad.
My level 5 is a lot more interesting than your level 5, Scott.
I guess it can be. I don't know.
I mean, because your mount can talk to you at level 5. Like
Oh
I said.
yeah, the time talks too. It just jumps off the page. Wow, that's months. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
That's a lot of months.
you're probably like a level 3 something or another. You know, you don't have a familiar though, do you?
Just my Chihuahua.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I don't know, man. I don't really know what kind of character points in the
Level 5.
It's really a very short-lived pop folk rock duo that Scott and I were involved in back in the mid-90s, and it was called Level 5.
Level 5. Thought it was called Limousine.
It had several incarnations.
You are listening to Limousine. And we're having trouble getting a hold of the guest tonight, which is really odd because I just talked to him like yesterday.
That's weird.
Because I booked this really super short notice. Because I want us to have a show before Easter.
Yeah, the Easter show. And this is a very appropriate
topic, sure. But
let me think of some Latin words that I know.
Okay.
Sanzus, Dominus, yeah.
Habeas corpus, there we go.
Hell, hold on.
Corpus delicti.
Okay, corpus, now that's a good one. Corpus delicti. I don't know what that means, but how about Cruce Signatus?
I don't know what that means.
That's a good one.
There we go, yeah.
Cruce Signatus means you're the bearer of the cross. You know, it's like a crusader term.
There's let's see here. Let me think about my Latin here.
Yeah.
In arguendo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good legal word there.
So I guess innuendo must also be a Latin word.
I have no idea.
Well, in arguendo. Yeah, it's a direct derivation of that. Yeah.
And there's nunc pro tunct.
Oh, nunc pro tunct. That's a sexy one right there. Stop for tuncting, please.
Let's see what else. What else do I have out there in the Latin world of Let's see here. Inter alia.
Inter alia. Oh, yeah. I almost named my daughter that.
I'm trying to think now, man. You got me.
I know, like I'm just throwing this at you. I mean, I really only know Cruce Signatus. I mean, that's a cool word. That's all I really need. You know, Dominus, where I got that one. Altari or something like that. I don't know.
Spiritus Sanctus.
Yeah. Oh, Deus
877-722-7382. Don't free.
Deus Ex Machina. Is that right?
Deus what?
Deus Ex Machina.
I have no idea.
God in the machine.
I don't know, man.
Ex Machina.
I took Latin briefly in the college.
Yeah, the same college I went to.
I dropped out.
Yeah, the same college I dropped out.
I dropped out of that, yeah.
Yeah, we hit a...
Dropped out of the class and the college.
And
so did you.
I know. We had a trash can one time.
Yeah.
It was on the highway, guys. It wasn't like we intentionally did it. It was like we were going to watch a movie down there, and it was like a blizzard that was coming in, and this 5-gallon trash can or whatever, like rolled underneath Scott's little Datsun thing. Was it
a Datsun? I don't know.
Was it my car?
Was it your? I don't know.
I think it was my car, whatever it was. But either way, we hit the trash can. Then we stopped and we opened up the trunk, and then we got the trash can and put it in the trunk. There was nothing in the trash can.
This was like late 90s. I'm thinking around 98.
You know, we did a lot of weird stuff like
97,
that.
Maybe.
A lot of guerrilla stealing things.
We did steal things, yes, from the street.
Just random stuff.
Like we stole that piece of wood from the highway that painted yellow and white, and we stole it. Put it in the back of the van and drove off.
Didn't we run down the street with that?
Yeah, we ran down the street with it. Yeah. This was a long time ago. And luckily, statute of limitations is run on that.
Sorry, yeah.
So we can confess.
But I mean, if I remember correctly, yeah, we were running.
Unless there's some kind of federal law that we're breaking, in which case
we're
then
not tell that story. It's a pretty funny story, though.
Well, they still have to prove it, I think. And,
you just
make it hard.
Well, we're not saying what street it's from.
The confession alone's not enough.
Oh, okay.
You can't do that.
So those
corpus delicti argument.
Corpus delicti. See how we see that?
Anybody can go into, people do this all the time. They go into police stations and say, "I killed so and so," and the cops are like, they try to look into it. But yeah, people go in and all they admit to crimes they didn't do all the time.
Why?
I have no idea.
Fame. They're bored.
Like we're doing here now, you know.
But I mean, we actually did.
We never did.
Scott, I mean, they can't see your quotation marks.
Air quote.
they can't see you winking over the microphone.
Nudge, nudge. Say no more. Say no more. Chuck is just having a great time.
I know. He's like,
he's got this look on his face.
Hopefully, he's thinking more.
Like, I showed up for this. I showed up for this tonight. This is great.
Well, come on.
He got here thinking Ratzinger was going to come on, and he's like, "This is a letdown."
Yeah,
oh my!
Last Pope.
This is a letdown.
What is he called, Ratzinger? He's not called ex-Pope. He's like Pope.
Pope Benedict?
No. He has a title like.
Yeah.
alumnus or some kind of Latin word.
I don't. I just know it's Benedict something.
It wasn't Pope very long.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. Why would you stop being Pope?
Well, now we got Pope Francis, who I guess could be Peter the Roman, as the prophecy goes.
But he's not Roman. He's South American.
Yeah, I mean, he's telling you it's okay. Everything's fine. You know,
We're
you're all going to heaven. It's all good.
You see the spot with him and the kid that just walked up to the podium while he was televised there doing the ceremony. Didn't faze him at all.
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that.
He's just a real easygoing guy.
Well, I mean, he seems like a down-to-earth guy. I mean, did you see the part where he's read about where he was going to the mass or something, or and then he goes to confess his sins to one of the priests that's there in the box. Everybody freaks out. They're like, "What's he doing? He's the Pope." Yeah, you want to give confession.
Huh.
Weird, huh?
Well, I mean, those are positive qualities. Not
That's
everything-
the surprise in the box of the day. Huh?
What's it?
Yeah, who's in the box? Who's on the other side of the petition? Oh my God, it's the Holy See.
What? I mean, there's some positive things about that guy. Yeah, I get that. Being more of a populist kind of a pope. When most popes are very, they're very hierarchical. But I mean, I think there's a line that has to be drawn there.
Yeah, you're the Pope.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, I'm a general of an army, and I'm going to hang out and eat lunch with the soldiers, but I'm not really a soldier. I'm still the general of the army. You know what I mean? And in the end, like, you still have to listen to what I have to say, even though I'm trying to be one of you guys. I can never really be one of you guys.
That's because he's the Pope.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
Well, that might be our guy, actually.
Anyway.
That'd be kind of cool.
You want to go ahead and punch him through?
No, why don't you answer it, man?
Screen it gives it.
Yeah, there we go. We're so professional here. We really are. We're just, I know that's exactly who it could be. So it's just, it's one of those things, man.
Professional.
It's,
I don't know what the Latin word is for professional. I'll learn it next time.
yeah, okay, good as our guest. Yeah.
There's some other circumnavigate. That's not Latin.
Circumnavigate.
What was another cool word?
Okay, we're going to put him on?
No, he's going to switch computers. So go ahead and
Why don't we just
take
go
a break.
We're going to take a break then, guys. We'll be back in a little bit. 877-722-7382. Don't call until we get back, though, because we're going to be outside smoking cigarettes. Yeah, cigarettes. So call 877-722-7382. Give us a call. And we're back, World of the Unexplained. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a hold of our guest, Cris Putnam. And as I spoke about earlier, he is a best-selling author and Christian apologist, and he's on our show now. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, it's great to be on World of the Unexplained with you.
It's great to have you here. Tell us about this last pope for the beginning of the beginning of our last hour here, and then we're going to move on to your new book. But tell us what you discovered when you actually went back and looked at some of these prophecies of who these 112 popes are going to be.
Okay, sure. Well, you're talking Petrus Romanus, the final pope is here. And, that book actually, it covers a lot of things. It's got a lot of church history. It's got a lot of eschatology in general. Views of the Protestant reformers, who incidentally all believed that the papacy was the fulfillment of the Antichrist. And this was really the universal belief of the Protestant church into the 20th systematic theology textbook that was used at Princeton Theological Seminary up until like 1930 or so by Charles Hodge, and on how the papacy is the Antichrist.
Wow.
That whole belief is really the rug, and hardly anybody are pretty strong on that. They still pretty much believe that, but I wouldn't say that I believe that necessarily. I don't think the papacy is the Antichrist, but I do think that there's a strong chance that the final in this prophecy that could be the false prophet that's mentioned in biblical prophecy. So, that book covers a lot of ground. It kind of spins off of, and it's really the first couple chapters of the book are talking about the Malachi prophecy, a Catholic, about the papacy, and it's kind of a legendary thing. It's really hard to pin down the origins of it, but what it is allegedly this Irish saint, after he had journeyed to Rome, where he saw 112 popes.
Chris, are you on a Skype phone?
Century.
Are you on Skype?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you keep kind of going in and out on this. That's why we were wondering. Can we call you at another number?
You want to try to? Yeah, let
me try to call you on your cell. Is that okay?
I can call you back on a different phone.
Okay, that'd be great. Give us a call right back. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, that was all these weird noises. I'm like, this has to be a Skype phone because it's cutting in and out on us. But anyway, interesting stuff we're getting into, and hopefully he'll be back with us soon. That's 112, the last 112 popes. So I guess this guy's it.
I suppose so. I was going to have a question about the
Francis.
Yeah, Francis, not
Ratzinger. No,
Ratzinger.
He retired.
His name is, once again, I just can't. Seems like in the Middle Ages that would have happened.
What?
Pope retirement.
It would have happened?
It would not have happened.
Oh, no, probably not.
If the Pope wanted to retire, it's like, oh, okay, you will retire.
Yeah.
To the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There we go. Just bring him right on in. You with us, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sound much better. Much better. Go ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
So where was I? I was talking about, I've gotten to the Malachi prophecy. So, we're dealing with what purports to be a 900-year-old Catholic prophecy by St. Malachi, where he saw 112 popes into the future. Now, there's a lot of controversy about this prophecy. Was it really from Malachi? A lot of people will say, no, it's a forgery. Well, I kind of bypassed all of that. I did discuss it. In fact, my book has more information on that than any other book I'm aware of, because I've read almost everything I could find. And I think I uncovered some unprecedented information about the prophecy and its origins. But, just to kind of get around, was it really by Malachi or anything else? What was really interesting to me is it was widely published and distributed in the 16th century, okay? No one disputes that. It was in a book called L.U.C.I.F.E.R by a scholar named Arnold de Wion, and he published it. And so no one even disputes that in 1595 it was disseminated all around Europe. And so what's interesting to me is that you can look at a lot of the prophecies after that, and they really do seem to be fulfilled in pretty astounding ways. So, no matter who it came from, whether it was Malachi, some people would say that maybe Nostradamus was responsible for it. And, just put Malachi's name on it so the church, wouldn't discipline him for doing it. Because the thing that's interesting is the prediction for the final pope. And that's the one that really fascinated my co-author and me, because that is the Pope that we have in office right now. Pope Francis is the last on the list.
Peter the Roman.
The prophecy for him says, in the extreme persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will sit Peter the Roman, who will nourish the sheep in many tribulations, and when they're finished, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people.
Wow.
So that's a pretty apocalyptic sounding prophecy. And for someone like me who has studied the book of Revelation, there's some remarkable coincidences that jump out at you. It mentions the city of 7 hills, which is classically, known as Rome has been known as the city of 7 hills. And if you look at Revelation chapter 17, in the middle of the chapter, it talks about, it's talking about Mystery Babylon, this great harlot. It's a city, and it says that the seven heads, it's a 7-headed beast that she's riding. But then in the middle of the chapter, it says the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which she sitteth. And most scholars see that as a clear reference to the city of Rome. But even more clear, I think, is the last verse of Revelation chapter 17, because it says, the woman that you saw, and it's referring to this harlot, beast system. The woman that you saw is that great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Now, if you study biblical hermeneutics, interpreting an ancient text like that, one of the main rules of thumb is that you really want to try to determine what was the original author's intention for his readers, and let that be your guide as to the meaning of the text. A lot of people want to try to impose their modern sensibilities onto an ancient text, but it had a meaning, and if we believe the author was inspired, then what he intended it to mean is what it means.
Sure.
So, at the time that John was writing the book of Revelation, those scholars would put that around AD 90. So no matter, near the end of the first century AD, that was the peak of the Roman Empire. So there really isn't even another candidate for the city that had dominion over the kings of the earth other than Rome. So I think that clearly, that passage in its original context is talking about Rome. So, does that transfer really neatly into our modern context? Well, maybe. I think it definitely has a component in it. And like I said, our Protestant traditions would definitely place it that way. And you'll also find that quite a few Catholic scholars saw the Roman Catholic Church as the great harlot in Revelation 17 as well, including someone as notable as Cardinal Henry Newman, who is a very well-respected Catholic theologian, and he said in his writings, he wrote that, one day the church would go apostate and would fulfill that prophecy. So,
wow.
It's not just a Protestant idea. And so, when we see these parallels, and then we see this 900-year-old Catholic prophecy that does have a track record of predicting the future, saying that this is the final pope, it's suggestive that, we could be facing the end times during the reign of Pope Francis. Now, nobody knows how long that is, so it's not really a date-setting scheme, because sometimes popes are in office for 20 years. But that's why we got fascinated, and that's why we wrote the book.
Now, did you write this with Tom Horn?
Yes, I did.
Okay, we've had Tom on the show, back in 07?
Yeah.
We're around in there?
Right.
Yeah, we've had Tom on before. Very interesting guy, and his books are very fascinating as well. Could you give our listeners a websites of your different websites that you have available?
Certainly. My main website, where I do apologetics and theology and a variety of subjects, is logosapologia.org, and that's really two Greek words, logos, L-O-G-O-S, and apologia, which is the Greek word for defense. That's where apologetics comes from, so that's LOGOSAPOLOGIA.org. My wife says I should have made it a lot easier than that.
I get you.
But that's my main site. And then my new book that's coming out in May is Supernatural Worldview. It's called the Supernatural Worldview, so it's just all one word, supernaturalworldview.com. And it's just spelled the way you would expect it to.
Okay.
No Greek in there.
No Greek in that one. No.
Good. If people want to call in and speak with you, the number here is 877-722-7382. It's toll free. 1-877-SCARE, the letter U, the number 2. Go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, I really know nothing about this Malachi that you're talking about, but I do know a little bit about religious writings in the later Middle Ages, and a lot of them tend to be extremely symbolic. And I can't remember the name of any of these people that I've read, but a lot of blood, a lot of monsters, and a lot of very graphic, real, vivid kind of pictures. Is that how the Malachi prophecies go?
Well,
or is it a little more straightforward?
The Malachi prophecy is a lot simpler than that. Most of it, like what I just read you about the final prophecy, that's the longest one, and none of the others are like that. The other ones are just these little phrases, and they're highly symbolic. And I mean, I think a valid criticism is that you could say they're vague. But some of them are pretty astounding. I'll give you some examples. Like, some of them are just things like, let's see. Well, I want to say that one. Let me see what I got here. I think maybe like flower of flowers. Okay, that's really one of the ones. That's what it is. And so you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, the way it works is a lot of them seem to describe the heraldry of the popes. Now, if you know a little bit about the Middle Ages, heraldry is the coat of arms, for a family or a royalty. And that was a really big deal back then. I mean, we don't even pay attention to anything like that anymore, but back then it was a huge deal. And it turns out that, the popes had to have that in place by the time they were even a cardinal. So this one in Latin, it's Flos Florum, and in English, roughly flower flowers. Now, it's a really interesting thing because this was Paul VI, and he was Pope from 1963 till 78. And his coat of arms has 3 fleur-de-lis symbols, and these are these kind of tri-leafed flower symbols used by the French monarchy. And it's kind of interesting because a fleur-de-lis in French literally means flower of lily. So it matches this prediction from, hundreds of years before, which said flower of flower, quite well. Mm-hmm. So the way the prophecy works is you have this little sequence of these little phrases. So the one before him was pastor e nota, and it just means shepherd and sailor, pastor and sailor. Nota is just like the word for sailor. Uh-huh. And interestingly, that was Pope John the 23rd. And he was the patriarch of the city of Venice, which is the city where the streets are made of water and everybody goes around in a boat. So, that's the kind of thing, that's kind of the way it works. So, some people would criticize it and go, well, it doesn't always refer to the same thing. They don't always refer to heraldry. Sometimes it's something about the Pope or where he's from. So, it's you could say that it's easy to go fishing around to find a match. I think that that's a valid criticism, but it gets to be uncanny when you see so many of them that are like that. But the one that really captured my imagination and it convinced me that I couldn't just dismiss this thing, because I tried to debunk it when I first started researching. Right. But it was the one for Pope Benedict XV. Now, his motto was Religio Depopulata in Latin, and so that translates to religion depopulated. Now, think about that. This is a different thing than saying flower of flowers, all right? Right. Religion depopulated, that's a claim, that something's going to happen. Religion's going to be depopulated. And that's falsifiable, and you wouldn't expect it to happen because, all things being equal, religions in the church, they kind of just stay the same. They might go up a little or down a little, but this is saying it's going to be depopulated. That sounds pretty strong. Yeah. Now, Benedict XV, who this one matches up to, was Pope from 1914 to 1922. Now, this is a risky prediction, like I said. Roman Catholicism had grown or stayed the same. This probably would be falsified. But, at this time in history, this is when we had World War I, okay? Yeah. And this was devastating to Europe, devastating to the Roman Catholic Church. But really, to add insult to injury, this is the time of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. You had 200 million people that left the church to join the Communist Party. The ones that didn't were persecuted, and you had Stalin and Lenin, who specifically wrote about targeting the religious leaders because they saw them as a threat to the state. Yeah. So probably, they said the Soviet Union, they probably killed millions during this time. Stalin probably killed 43 million people. So right when this prophecy, that you can prove is in print, 1595, says religion depopulated, this is probably the time in history where religion was depopulated more heavily than any other time I can think of. Huh. And that one is pretty stunning.
Yeah, I imagine so. I guess if you look at them individually, then, you could go, oh, what is all that? And then, of course, when you take them collectively, and then, just take detail after detail, then it paints a different picture.
So go ahead.
It's hard to just dismiss it, Yeah, some of them you could look at and go, that could, be somebody's suspicion. But this one here, it's specific, and it's, it really happened, and it was an unprecedented event in history, and I just think that there's something supernatural going on with this one.
Do you believe that Pope Francis is the last pope?
I'll tell you what, there's so many things that have happened that, I do, and And I'll tell you what happened. That this is the most stunning thing, because I really didn't expect this to happen. During my research for the book, like I said, I was going around trying to find everything I could find on this prophecy, and a lot of it is, from Europe and things like that. And I found a book in French. It was called The Mysterious Prophecy of the Popes, and it was by a Jesuit priest named René Thibault. He was a university professor in Belgium, but he really believed in this prophecy, and he found all kinds of weird encryption codes, and he was moving the Latin letters around and finding all these hidden things. It's a really amazing book. I mean, the guy just spent tons of time analyzing the Latin text of this Malachi prophecy. Well, this book that he wrote is copyright 1950, okay? And he died in like 1951 or 1952, I believe. And so he never even really got to see anything from this book. And the interesting thing is he predicts over and over again that the final pope would arrive in the year 2012.
Wow.
Okay? And one of the ways he did it was he just extrapolated the average papal reign. He went back from the beginning of the prophecy and calculated how, on average, the pope was in office 11 years. And then he was writing around 1950, so he just said, okay, there's this many popes left. We'll multiply that by 11. And he landed in, like, April of 2012 or March of 2012. I think April. And so I even put that on a spreadsheet and calculated, showed all the numbers. It's in the book. And the interesting thing was, our book came out in March of 2012. And we put this in there, and we kind of went on a limb and said, well, if this is true, the year 2012, everybody was speculating about the Mayan calendar and all the apocalyptic stuff anyway. So here we have a connection. The final pope's going to arrive in 2012. If that book hadn't been copyright 1950, I would have accused him of just jumping on the Mayan calendar bandwagon. But, nobody was talking about 2012 in 1950.
Sure.
So that made it even more compelling. So we took a risk. We saw some rumors that Benedict might be thinking about stepping down. There was a rumor going around that his health wasn't good, and he had actually written that he thought it would be okay for a pope to retire. Now, that never has happened in like 400 or 500 years. I think the last one to retire was nearly 400 years ago to step down. I think it was in 1415. So, there was a rumor that Benedict wasn't doing well. So we heard that. We had heard that rumor. And then, we had this prophecy. So we basically wrote out that we thought Benedict would step down and the final pope would arrive in 2012. And we even put April. And this is the book didn't even come out till March. So we gave our book like a shelf life of a month. That's pretty stupid. But anyway, it didn't happen in April. And, we're like, okay, we were wrong. Well, René Thibault was wrong. This is wrong. But, there was enough other things in the book that didn't ruin the book. But, we did kind of take a risk with that. And it seemed like it wasn't going to happen. And then it was February 11th, 2013. I'll never forget that day because that's the day Benedict did step down. Lightning struck St. Peter's Basilica twice, and it was on TV. Yeah. The big lightning bolt hitting the top of St. Peter's. When he announces it, and then there was an article in the New York Times the next day, and I have the quote right in front of me. It says that the resignation was long in the planning was confirmed by Giovanni Maria Vian of the Vatican newspaper, who wrote Monday that the Pope's decision was taken many months ago after his trip to Mexico and Cuba in March of 2012.
Wow. Y'all were right. Y'all were right.
Yes.
So it was right. Yes. Yeah, it was correct. And, I didn't see that coming. So that's the kind of thing, I don't know what to do with that. I really don't. Does that mean the Malachi prophecy is true? Not necessarily, because it's really talking about this weird concoction that René Thibault came up with. But, I just start to get all these strange coincidences, and I just have to think that something is going on that's beyond my research ability.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, we're going to take a short break. We're with Cris Putnam tonight. You're listening to World of the Unexplained. Our live call-in number is 1-877-722-7382. You can also hit us up in the Fringe Radio Network chat room. We're in there right now. James is in there taking messages and questions. And you can also email us at worldoftheunexplained@gmail.com or just give us a call. We're with Cris Putnam. We're going to be back in about 5 minutes. We'll see you then. And we're back. You're listening to World of the Unexplained. Our guest tonight is Cris Putnam. He is a best-selling author, and he's also a Christian apologist. He's also got a master's in Theological Studies from Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary. And Liberty's a great school. I would have went to law school there if I weren't such a heathen. But he's with us now. Cris, are you still with us?
I am.
Great. You were speaking to James on the break, and he said you wanted to continue talking about your the Pope thing.
Well, actually, I was saying, we did a follow-up book called Exo-Vaticana.
Yes.
Now, this book is quite a bit different than Petrus Romanus in that, when Tom and I were doing interviews on Petrus Romanus, of course, the subject of Roman Catholicism comes up a lot with that because, it's about the Pope and all that. But, a lot of people, Tom has written about extraterrestrials and UFOs and things like that, and he covers those topics on his Raiders News Update website. So a lot of people were asking us, will you guys make this connection between the Catholic Church and, the interest in extraterrestrials? Because, if you get on the internet, I would challenge the listeners out there, just go to your favorite search engine and type in baptize extraterrestrial, those two words in the search field, and you're going to get hundreds of hits, and they're all going to be interviews with various Jesuit astronomers who work for the Vatican Observatory Research Group, and the acronym for that is VORG, and they use it. I have a little fun with that because it sounds so much like the Borg.
Yeah. Exactly.
You will be assimilated.
Yes.
We actually interviewed Alice Cridge, who played the Borg Queen years ago in one of those films.
Yep.
But, so these guys are the Vorg. And, you'll literally see there's all kinds of articles. Well, I know I've counted at least 4 of these guys have done public interviews where they mentioned that they really want to baptize extraterrestrials into the Catholic Church. Wow. And, you think it's just kind of tongue-in-cheek by the tone of some of them, but, when you see them doing it over and over again, you start to wonder, are they serious? Because, the Catholic Church maintains a state-of-the-art astronomical observatory at the premier location in the United States. It's high on top of a mountain in Arizona, Mount Graham, and it's in partnership with the University of Arizona in Tucson, but this is about an hour from Tucson, out in the middle of the desert in a little town called Safford, and then there's Mount Graham. But up on top of Mount Graham, you have the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, and then there's a radio telescope called the Sub-Millimeter Radio Telescope, and then right up the road, within walking distance, is a telescope called the Large Binocular Telescope, and that happens to be the most powerful telescope in the world, bar none. In fact, they told me, Tom and I toured this whole facility, and even talked to one of the Jesuits inside the vat. But when we were in the LVT, one of the things I learned, I was kind of shocked to hear this, is that telescope gets clearer images than the Hubble Space Telescope.
Wow.
It's how powerful it is. And then, the Hubble Space thing is a satellite way out and already in space. And the reason that this facility is so state-of-the-art is that a fellow at the University of Arizona in Tucson pioneered a new mirror technology, a new way of making telescope mirrors. If you know anything about astronomy, the mirror is really everything for a telescope. That's where all the power comes from. It's about mirror size. The bigger the mirror, the more light you can gather. The more light you can gather, the further into space you can see. The further into space you can see, the further back into time you can see. A lot of people don't think about that, but the light coming from these stars, even though it's traveling at the speed of light, a lot of times it's really old. It could be thousands of years old by the time we see it.
Sure.
Some of the things that we see in space aren't there anymore, but we won't know it. Interestingly, the further back you look, the further back in time you're looking. So these mirrors are huge, though, is really the main point I'm getting at. And the guy kind of pioneered a way to use Pyrex glass, but it has bubbles like a waffle kind of in the back of it. So you can make a bigger mirror, and it's lighter. It's not so heavy. And that was one of the restricting factors in the past where they couldn't get them past a certain size. But the LBT is called binocular because it has two, and they're huge. These mirrors are huge. But the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, it actually got the very first mirror that was of substantial size. And it's over, I think they measure it in meters, but I think it's like 6 feet. He was bigger than I am tall, and I'm 6'2". So that's a big mirror. And that was the first, that was like the prototype. They gave it to the Vatican, and that was the first telescope that went online. Now, it sounds really wacky, but the guy who was the head of the Borg at that time was a Jesuit named George Coignet. Now, if you look at him up on the internet, he does videos with Richard Dawkins, who's the world's most famous atheist, and he's an evolutionist, and he's trying to get, he kind of like tries to debunk creationism, and he wants Christians to embrace the same Darwinism that the atheists are talking about. It's kind of interesting to me how he's like this crusader for Darwinism. But Coignet did some interviews in 1993 when the Vatican went online. Now, here's a quote from one of these articles. Coignet envisions asking extraterrestrials contacted through the sub-millimeter radio frequency technology if they had ever experienced something similar to Adam and Eve. In other words, original sin. And do you know Jesus who has redeemed you? Apparently, the sacred calling on Mount Graham International Observatory extends beyond the quest for epiphanies to a willingness to spread the gospel universal message.
Wow.
Coignet literally went on and said that they were going to try to find, NASA was going to be looking to contact the aliens, and that at the VAT, they were going to be trying to find what planet the aliens were located on, and then they were going to have to find out if they were going to baptize them into the church or not. This is what he said in 1993. And then since then, you've had a steady string of these interviews of these Jesuits talking about baptizing ETs. And, I don't know if they're just joking or if they're serious, but there are some reasons to think that they might know something we don't.
Well, how does this all tie in with the whole Nephilim and the whole some of the L.A. Marzulli stuff that the Watchers? I've got some of that stuff. I think I've got up to Watcher 6 now that I've seen, and we've interviewed L.A. several times on the show before.
I'm actually in Watcher 7.
I don't have that one.
The next one, he interviewed me in that, and interestingly, he interviewed a ufologist down in Mexico named Jaime Musan. And Jaime Musan was a friend of Corrado Balducci. Now, Corrado Balducci is a Monsignor in the Catholic Church. He's a demonologist. He was the exorcist for the city of Rome.
Wow.
Quite interestingly, he went on Italian television in 1997 and gave an interview on national television in Italy, and he said unequivocally that they know aliens exist. No holds barred. He just let it out. He said there's no doubt. We can't doubt it at all. And let's see if I can find the exact quote. But yeah, so Balducci, he can't just say he's like some loose cannon nut job or something, because Monsignor is an honorary title that you can only get from the Pope. And so Pope John Paul II made him a Monsignor. And okay, here, like he said, the evidence that he's aware of makes the existence of these beings into a certainty. So that's what he said on Italian television. And, he would go to UFO conventions, where, the UFO crowd, some people are like New Agers that think the aliens are saviors here to help us in our spiritual evolution. These kind of really diverse crowds of weird UFO people, right?
Oh, yeah.
He would speak at that, and here's the kind of things he would say. Here's a quote from a speech he gave at a UFO convention. I always wish to be the spokesman for these star peoples who are also part of God's glory, and I will continue to bring it to the attention of the Holy Mother Church. So, he was just head over heels believing in aliens. Now, you asked me about LA's take and all that. Well, I'm pretty much on the same page as L.A. Marzulli as far as what I think is going on. I think the UFO phenomenon is largely deceptive. The messages that you get coming from people who have contact are inevitably anti-Christian and anti-biblical. It seems kind of odd to me that advanced aliens would travel so many light years to come here just to debunk Christianity. But they seem to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to do that. And you never hear them talking about other religions. Yeah. It's like, really? So I tend to think that, like LA, that we're dealing with fallen angels who are kind of put in a ruse. And interestingly, in the book Exo-Vaticana, I cover quite a few different perspectives, but one of the people that I respect, now I don't share his worldview, but Jacques Vallée is one of the original ufologists. He worked with J. Allen Hynek in the 60s on Project Blue Book. He has a master's degree in astrophysics and a PhD in computer science. But he's been writing books about UFOs since the 60s. His first one was Passport to Magonia in 69, I think. And so he's probably written 10 more since then, at least. But some of the book titles are suggestive. Messengers of Deception.
Oh, wow.
One of them. And L.A. has quoted that one quite a bit. But yeah, Vallée, after studying this phenomenon for basically 30 years, he quickly came to the conclusion that we're not dealing with extraterrestrials from another planet. He's the one that really started the idea that we're looking at something maybe from another dimension that's not that far away. And he has something he calls the control grid hypothesis. And what does he mean by that? Well, he thinks that the whole purpose of it is to basically steer the belief systems of human beings, that they're here to influence people and mold their worldviews.
Sure.
And, interestingly, when you look at things in the New Testament, where Paul says, we're not battling against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. And the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. This is in 2 Corinthians 4:4. You get this idea that the Bible's talking about spiritual entities that are influencing the world's worldview, that is trying to blind them to the truth of the gospel. And then, you have these entities, you have a secular researcher looking at this phenomenon going, hey, these are messengers of deception that are trying to influence people's worldviews. Yeah. And you start to see a remarkable correlation.
Well, I know that part of some of the watchers, the older ones, would talk about the alien implants and how I believe one of his theories was that they're trying to get it right, and so it's going to become part of the DNA. And here you go, we're going to give you an upgrade, and this is the mark of the beast, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm familiar with all those ideas. I don't know. I'm really hesitant to make any absolute statements about this phenomenon because the evidence is largely anecdotal. It's hard to, LA has come up with some physical evidence in his last video. The one that I'm in, it's called physical evidence. They do find a piece of metal in someone's leg, But it's really hard to nail down what's going on with this all the time. The whole UFO phenomenon is murky water. Some of it is probably technology that our government's hiding from us, but some of it does seem to be what Vallée called psycho-spiritual. And so did J. Allen Hynek. He came to the same conclusion that, sometimes it seems physical, sometimes it seems immaterial. There's something strange going on. But, you look at the way angels function in the Bible, and that's the way they are. They manifest physical bodies at times, but other times they're like spirit beings. They just seem to be able to come and go and manifest at will. And, if that's the way the good ones are, I suspect the fallen angels are similar. And they also seem to be able to use telepathy because, you look at when Joseph, when Mary was pregnant and Joseph didn't know what was going on, what happened? Well, if you go back and study that passage, it says an angel appeared to him in a dream. Yeah. Okay, how does that work? That has to be some sort of telepathy for them to talk to him in his dream. So it's some kind of mind-to-mind communication. And, you know, if you listen to what alien abductees and people that have contact with these entities say, they inevitably will tell you that they didn't have a mouth, or they communicated through telepathy. So it does seem to have some interesting correlations to what we see, descriptions of angels. So I think that's a likely match for some of the phenomenon. I wouldn't say all of it, but, you know, I think some of it probably is a spiritual phenomenon. I do think that it's likely to deceive people. And, you know, a major theme in the book Exo-Vaticana is that it is a strong possibility to pave the way for the Antichrist. Now, I actually wrote a seminary paper on that idea, and believe it or not, I wrote a seminary paper on the UFO phenomenon as the end-time delusion. Oh. And it was well received, and that was at Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary. And my main point with that was, we have all these prophecies that talk about a one-world government, a world leader, right? We call the Antichrist. Sure. And, you know, what's going to make... Look at how diverse our world still is. You know, we have atheists, we have Buddhists, we have New Agers,
the Muslims,
you know, hippies, conservatives. People have different worldviews, and what's going to make all these people from diverse backgrounds buy into one man who claims authority and then even claims to be God? You know, and the Bible says this deception is going to be so convincing that even the elect might be deceived. You know, Jesus says that in Matthew 24. And, you know, something is going to have to be transcendent about this for so many diverse worldviews to believe it. Well, one of the things I do in my PowerPoint when I talk on this subject is I have a clip of Ronald Reagan speaking at the United Nations. And Reagan was famous for saying this, but, you know, he was talking about war and how he says how quickly our differences worldwide would just evaporate if we were faced with an alien threat from outside of this world. You know, and he's talking about how the whole world would bond together to fight the aliens, and that would, you know, make our differences disappear. Well, the same thing would happen, you know, no matter what. You know, something transcendent of this world is going to catch the world's attention. So, you know, for that reason, I think that it has a lot of explanatory scope if somehow, I'm not saying that the Antichrist is an alien. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if he had some kind of connection to an alien claim, or, you know, something like that, to give him that authority. And there's a verse in Daniel that says that it seems to imply the Antichrist would worship a God that no one knows about. In the Hebrew, you could literally translate it to an alien God. Now, you know, probably in the context Daniel was thinking, maybe he meant like a foreign God, like a foreign country, but it literally would work to say that text says an alien God. Now, I'm not saying that's what it means, but it's a possibility. And I think that would definitely make the whole world stand up and pay attention. The other reason I think it's a compelling idea is you look at how the world is so prepared to believe it. One of the things that I quoted in the book is there was a survey in the United Kingdom in the year 2012. They did a poll. And according to the data, you can find this at the Huffington Post. There's a big article. More people in the UK believe in extraterrestrials than believe in God. Okay? Wow. Yeah, it was like 60% to 40, something like that. So, in a sense, the strong delusion is already here. And, you know, it really does seem to have something to do with extraterrestrials. You look at all the movies that Hollywood has pumped out since the 40s. And when you look at, you know, the science of astrobiology, you know, you can get a degree, you can get a PhD in a science that technically has nothing to study. So think about that. Have we found any life in space anywhere? No. How can you get a degree in astrobiology to study life in space? Well, you can.
That's crazy.
I don't know what you're going to do with it. But, you know, they think they're going to find it. And, you know, they found all kinds of exoplanets. And that's an interesting thing to look into. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea that there could be life in space. I'm not completely against that. I think it's possible. But, the argument that I make is a little different from the way some Christian apologists have done in the past. I've read the criticisms. One thing I like to do when I write on a subject like this is I go and read the people who are critical of my view, so I can understand why they think I'm wrong. All right?
Okay.
Because if I'm wrong, I'd like to know it. I don't want to write a book and be wrong. So one of the guys that I like, he's a little bit more liberal than me theologically, but his name is Ted Peters. Now, he's written books about UFOs, and he's a Lutheran theology professor. Now, he criticized what he called the fundamentalist position by saying, fundamentalists will say, well, the Bible doesn't mention aliens, therefore aliens don't exist. And he points out that this is, a fallacious argument from silence. The Bible doesn't mention toilet paper, but, I believe it exists, right? So it's not a really good argument to say, well, the Bible doesn't tell me there's aliens, so therefore they're not there. That's not a good argument. So I wanted to avoid that. What I make, it's a little different. I call it the argument from the biblical philosophy of history. And I kind of parse it like this. The Bible has prophecies, for Christians, and it's telling us, what to be looking forward to, what to expect, spiritually mainly. And, it's really strongly telling us to be watching for the return of Jesus Christ. And that's the main thing the church is looking forward to, that's going to set the world right. Now, you look at the message that's coming from the UFO nods, right? And they're saying the same kind of thing. They're kind of positioning themselves to be a savior. And you look at what people in the UFO community believe. They're talking about, well, the aliens they've been watching this since, since World War II when we set off the nuclear bomb and that attracted them. And they're here to save us from a nuclear war. There's this alien savior mythos. And I discussed that in the book. And people like Carl Jung wrote about that way back in the early 60s. The alien savior mythos. A lot of people see, this thing from the sky is coming to save us, and they've replaced, the idea of God or Jesus with the flying saucers. And this is kind of a substitute savior mythology that has developed in our culture. And, if you look at what Jesus wrote, he, over and over again says, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. That many false prophets will arise. But, the Bible is constantly warning us that there's going to be increasing levels of spiritual deception and substitute saviors, antichrist. That's really what the word means. It means instead of Christ. So you see all these warnings about that. You see that Jesus says there's going to be an unprecedented deception that, if it were possible, it would even deceive the elect. So this is what the biblical philosophy of history is. It's given us a trajectory of what to expect. Now, I don't see any room in there for highly advanced spiritual aliens coming down here to help me with my spiritual evolution. I just don't see that fitting anywhere into that philosophy of history, but it does fit really well with the deception that it's talking about. So, based on what the Bible does say, I'm seeing this as a deceptive thing, not on what it doesn't say. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not an argument from silence when you parse it that way.
Sure.
No, it's more of a metaphysical.
Let's get into your new book, The Spiritual Worldview. I know you start talking about the Rhine Research Center. Trent and I have been to the Rhine Research Center back in the 90s.
Okay.
That's where I discovered I had superpowers.
Oh, yeah. We took a field trip up there for our psychology class.
We wrote it was based on a paper, and
yeah, we did a video and interviewed one of the researchers there, and
I demonstrated psychic ability.
All
It's true. No, I'm serious. According to their testing equipment, but probably a bogus name.
I haven't got hooked up to the GANS field.
Oh, yeah.
Where they put the ping pong balls over your eyes.
Oh, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did.
There's going to be a video coming out probably next week. That Tom Horn's son is producing it, but I shot some footage up there with all that, and he's going to do a promo for the book, so that should come out. Having me in the Gansfield chair. This should freak some people out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book is called The Supernatural Worldview. And this is really, it comes from my passion for apologetics, but I'm a little concerned. It also comes from prophecy as well. But, I really like you guys the angle that you have for your show here, because a lot of Christians are really afraid to talk about the paranormal, and for some good reasons. But one thing that I've found is most pastors don't know much about it and don't want to talk about it, and tend to demonize almost everything that comes along. And I think sometimes we don't give very good answers to some of the questions that people ask.
Right.
And we come across sounding kind of stupid and ignorant. And I've seen that happen. And I think that's a problem. And, one of the things I write about in the book, and I call it the paranormal paradigm shift. And what I'm getting at is for so many years, in apologetics, we've been up against a battle with atheistic naturalism. This idea that all that exists is, matter and laws of physics and chemistry, and we're just accidents of a bunch of molecules ramming into each other, And so this has been the dominant worldview. It still is, that's promoted at our universities.
Sure.
Scientific naturalism, material reductionism, that everything reduces to matter. Well, that's going to die. It's dying right now. It's really already dead. I think the books by Richard Dawkins and Chris Hitchens and these neo-atheists really represent the death throes of naturalism more than its resurgence, because of things like the problem of consciousness, okay? The evidence that consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of the brain is starting to become overwhelming. I'm talking about scientific evidence even. And so you're having like atheistic philosophers that are flipping. And, they're not becoming Christians, but they're not materialists anymore. They're not naturalistic reductionists. They know that there's something more to human consciousness than matter. It's really becoming overwhelming. And so what's happening? Well, if you look at our nation, spiritually, we're becoming increasingly pagan. And that's really the dominant worldview and religious attitude in America now is pantheistic monism, believe it or not. And it took me for a while to really realize how true that was, but even a lot of churches are monistic now, and I'm talking about the mainline denominations like Episcopals and things like that, but I can unpack that a little bit, but I really want to get to where you were talking about with the Rhine and all that. So I want to look at different angles of evidence from an apologetic point of view that points to the fact that naturalism is false, number one, that we do have a soul, that we do have immaterial mind and being. And there's just a ton of scientific evidence that points that way. Some of it does involve, things like ESP and, the things that they look at the Rhine, near-death experiences. Some of the evidence for near-death experiences is just amazingly overwhelming. That really, to me, it just proves that there's an immaterial soul, without a doubt.
Sure.
Some of the theological conclusions that people come away with from near-death experiences are very problematic. But what you find with near-death experiences is that there's really two kinds of information that people collect. One of them is called veridical. And that just means that it's verifiable. It has some kind of real-world component that you can check. The other is just highly subjective. So, you get people who come back saying they saw Buddha. You get some people come back who saw Jesus. They make a movie about this little kid, who went to heaven and saw Jesus. But even his theology is kind of wacky because everybody turns into an angel with wings and everybody's flying around. It just sounds like something a kid would see. So there's a real subjective element. But I'll tell you, I'll go ahead and talk about the one case that I think is just amazing. It's the case of Pam Reynolds, okay? She had an NDE during surgery. So this case is really unprecedented in the fact that she was hooked up to EKGs and, all the monitoring machines, and the nature of the operation on her is just incredible. She had an aneurysm in her brain. You can find this out, it's all really well documented. But the aneurysm was so dangerous that the only way they could remove it was through a risky surgery, and they called it Operation Standstill. In order to do it, they had to drain all the blood out of her brain, put her on a heart-lung machine, and chill her body down to 60 degrees, okay?
Wow.
She was clinically dead on the operating table. That's the only way. And once they drain all the blood out of her brain, the aneurysm, it's like a little flap of flesh that's holding this bubble of blood. It flattens out, and they cut it off and stitch it up, and then they set the heart lung machine back on and pump her back full of blood, raise her body temperature, and bring her back alive, and then hit her with the paddles and shock her back to life. That's how they did it. Well, she describes jumping out of her body, hearing the bone saw that's cutting her scalp open. All right? She's looking over the surgeon's shoulder, watching him cut her skull cap off to work on her brain. She's looking over her shoulder watching. Then she describes the tools he's using. She goes, well, the saw was like an electric toothbrush, and he pulled it out of this case that was like a socket case, and she describes everything in great detail. And then she says, well, then the doctor down at my feet was complaining that my veins were too small, and the one up there at my shoulder said to move the catheter from my left leg to the right leg. Okay, all these details were confirmed by the surgery team.
Wow.
Her description of the tools was exact. In fact, the guy that wrote the book didn't believe it at first, and went and got pictures of the tools. It looked exactly like an electric toothbrush. And the thing with moving the catheter to one leg to the other, that happened. I mean, the people there all verified it. This was at a time where her EKG was flat. I mean, she was flatlined. So her brain was gone, had no blood in it. But she saw all this stuff. So the only way, how do we explain that? I mean, there has to be an immaterial you that exists apart from your brain and your body. And it's a really overwhelming piece of evidence. And there's more cases like that. And I unpack several of them in the book. These are what you call veridical near-death experiences. So to me, this is really, really compelling evidence that naturalism is false and that you have a soul. Okay? Now, that gets you a long way. That gets you a long way toward the gospel if you start to think about it. Because once you accept that, then you have to start wondering, well, where's my soul going to spend eternity?
You just watch people do surgery on everybody else. There's a point I wanted to stop you there. Just a hypothetical. And I don't really have an answer for it either. Okay, she sees and she hears these things, right? And I'm just going to use the hearing analogy. When you hear things, it's sound molecules coming through the air, right? And registering in your inner ear. In other words, like solid things are registering, and then those registering things, transmit signals to your brain.
You don't have ears, right?
Right. Yeah, you don't have ears. I mean, it's the question I always have with the near-death experiences. Like, how are you?
How are they doing it? I know. Well, how do ghosts talk?
Exactly.
People recording.
There are no vocal cords.
Right. They don't have vocal cords. They don't have lungs to push the air through them. I mean, what's going on? It has to be what parapsychologists call something like psi. It has to be some kind of telepathy or something. It's the only thing I can say. It has to be what they call psi, which is this kind of a psi is really not anything specific. It's just like a variable that just kind of says it's this psychic power. You don't really know what it is, but this is like the placeholder where this idea is, and they call it psi. It's based on the Greek letter psi.
Right.
And it is really just like an X in an algebra equation. It really doesn't have a definition other than we're trying to figure out what it is.
Something that's there, but you don't know what it is, but you know that it's there.
Some kind of psychic, way of perceiving that we just haven't really put our fingers on. But, like I said, it does match things that are in the scriptures. If you're a Christian, the telepathy definitely occurs with angels. Like I said, you see Joseph's dream where an angel appeared in his dream. It happens to both. It happens to Joseph in the Old Testament as well when he interprets dreams. But an angel appears in his dream, and then Daniel has dreams from an angel. And so it's like if angels could interact in our dreams, can they hear our thoughts? Well, that means they could probably read our minds, right? I don't know how all the details work, but it does seem to match things that are in the Bible. It's not something we can rule out as impossible. Can humans perceive it from other humans? Well, apparently, to some degree, they can. And one of the cases that I introduced the book with, I saw it on the television show Paranormal Witness. And I actually found the people that ran the case and interviewed them and uncovered some really unprecedented information. One of the ladies had a lot of psychic dreams about this car accident that happened, and she's a Christian. And, one of the ideas that I kind of hit home in the book is we tend to demonize a lot of this stuff. We shouldn't, I don't think. Some people, it seems to me, have abilities that are beyond the normal, and it's not something they ask for or even cultivated. They seem to be born that way. In the same way as some people have perfect pitch and can just play music and play music just naturally, like unbelievably, like some of Mozart. They're just not, they're just kind of like savants.
Yeah.
There do seem people that do have ability to read minds or have dreams about future events, precognition. Those things seem to occur. They're rare. But there are people that seem to have that ability more than others, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're involved in the occult. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people that have that talent do get involved in the occult because the occult tends to cater to that. It tends to affirm it. Now, a lot of Christian churches will, call it witchcraft, and so they're never attracted to go around that. But there are people that have, and I think that there is a role for that. And I think the role of prophecy is still valid in some regard. That gets controversial. You start talking about, the charismatic gifts and things, but I don't really see any biblical warrant to say that all those things went away in the first century.
Yeah, I was gonna point out that these powers that you talk about, there's a lot of connections. I would say I would make with the gifts of the Spirit.
I do too. Yeah, I think that's very possible. Yeah,
so,
I do.
I don't believe all this talking in tongues thing, though. Sorry. I don't. My brother-in-law is a pastor of a Church of God church here in another city near here, and they do that, and I'm like, that's weird, man. Yeah.
I think you should be careful. It's definitely biblical. If you look at what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 14, he definitely talks about that going on. Now, the thing I would commend you to think about is the existence of counterfeit.
Yeah.
It presumes that the real thing exists.
True.
Nobody, the devil doesn't, he's not stupid. He's not going to go around and print $3 bills. Right?
Yeah.
So he's not going to create some kind of false thing that's not based on something real. So, I think the real thing is probably very rare. And I think that there's a lot of nonsense going on. I think a lot of people probably are just spouting off gibberish to bring attention to themselves. Unfortunately, I think that happens.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean it's all fake, okay?
Sure, no, I
you
do
have
that.
to be careful.
I think I've talked to Scott about this a number of times too. The whole when you get involved in a spiritual movement, you want to be part of that spiritual wonder yourself,
right?
And when in fact maybe you're not, and so you see
some peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's legitimately doing it, and it's like I want to be part of that too, and so
it's like Amway.
Completely, yeah, totally like Amway, Scott.
I'll tell you what, you might be surprised. John Piper prays in a private prayer language.
Okay.
Very reformed, really straight up and down conservative Baptist pastor. He does that, and he's got sermons about he doesn't think the gift has gone away. So there's some very serious people who advocate it, and it's not all fake. I really don't think so. And some of the most incredible stories you'll hear of people in the mission fields, but there's people that actually do speak in languages that they don't know, and other people recognize them. And some of these things have been documented. If you really want to study it, there's a scholar, biblical scholar. His name's Craig Keener. He does real high-end biblical commentaries and things like that. And he was doing a footnote for his Acts commentary, and he was going to list some modern miracles and things like that to say that these things still happen. It ended up turning into about 1,000 pages. It's a 2-volume set. It's called Miracles by Craig Keener. And he really kind of debunks the whole, skepticism attitude that happened in the Enlightenment, but then he catalogs everything from healings to tongues to raising the dead, demon possession, exorcism. Yeah, there's plenty of contemporary accounts of the dead being raised. It's something that doesn't get reported, but it happens in places like rural India, where the gospel is really just first breaking through into new areas. Things like that still happen, apparently.
Well, let's talk about demon possession briefly.
Yeah, I got a whole chapter on that. Well, probably two, if you count one of them. But
do you believe that a person that is a Christian can become demon possessed?
Well, I would first qualify the question, because the term possessed is really kind of a Catholic idea. In the New Testament, the word it better translates to demonized.
Okay.
And yes, I think that a Christian can be demonized in that you can be influenced by a demon. I think you even see the apostles being demonized. When Jesus said that he was going to be crucified, Peter rebuked Jesus. He said, "No, Lord, that'll never happen." And what did Jesus say? He turned to him, he said, "Jesus, why has Satan got into you to say such a thing?" That's what he said to Peter. It's seeming to say that Satan influenced him to say that. Peter was telling him not to go to the cross. And Jesus rebuked him by saying, "Well, how's Satan gotten to you like that?" So, I think that's a clear example. Peter was influenced that way. And, so what you're asking, is this idea of being possessed is almost the idea of somebody being completely controlled by the demon. And, it's hard to think that if somebody that's really a Christian who's indwelt by the Holy Spirit would be completely controlled by a demon.
Sure.
I don't think that, maybe not to that level, where someone like an Adolf Hitler was probably controlled by demons, or even the devil himself. I suspect that that's what was driving him. But I think the Christians are certainly influenced, and maybe some more than others. It just depends on who they are and what the circumstances are. I think that we all can be to different levels, and I think that there's some telltale signs. And a lot of times it's a lot more subtle than what we expect. And, one of the things that I learned about, in the West, it seems to me that the strategy of the dark side for the last few decades anyway, maybe for the last century almost, has been to promote naturalism. So, the movie, The Usual Suspects, there's that famous line, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince the world he didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And I quote that in the book, and it actually came from a short story by a French author, where it's an interesting story. The guy is playing poker with the devil, doesn't realize it's the devil until he loses, and he loses his soul in the game. And that's really where they got that line from. It's from that French short story. And it's an interesting account, but I think that's been the strategy for a long time, but I think it's changing. And I present a lot of evidence in the book that we're in this, what I call, the paranormal paradigm shift. And some of it is driven by what I was saying, by things like consciousness, science, near-death experience evidence. You're having some of these academics who are really flipping the worldviews away from naturalism. But then you look at the culture at large, where people are really adopting all kinds of Eastern beliefs, but interest in the paranormal. Look at all the shows about ghost hunting. I mean, 10 years ago, I don't think there were any shows on television, about ghost hunting. I mean, maybe it was 15, but I mean, I'm getting old. But it's like, in my lifetime, I've just seen the increase in the interest in this stuff just explode. I mean, right now, I think there's at least a dozen shows on cable that are reality shows about the paranormal.
Yeah, I mean, when we started the show, when I started the show originally in college in 2002, I knew all the guys, before they had their shows and before this wasn't a really talked about thing.
Quiet, close.
We were friends with all these guys because there just wasn't a lot of them out there, and so we would have them on our shows, and And then as the popularity gained, I mean, it's like everybody's got a show nowadays. I mean, it's. But hey, it's one of those things. I mean, it's definitely increased, and it seems like it's on every channel that you flip to now.
That's right. So why is that? Well, some of it, I think, is because we've seen a move away from the Christian consensus in our country. I'm not saying that it's anti-Christian to believe in those things. I'm just saying that people have started seeking out alternative spiritualities. People can't live with the worldview of atheistic naturalism. It's a hopeless, just a really desperately horrible worldview to think that there's nothing, your life has no significance. So if you're not a Christian, if you don't believe in the Bible, you go looking for this, something that tells you that you're going to live on. And that's really what it is. It's a quest for some kind of assurance, some kind of comfort that death's not the end. If ghosts are real, then that's what it suggests. But unfortunately, one of the things that gets promoted is that everybody goes to heaven. It's this idea of universalism.
Sure.
It's real popular in our culture. If you're a good person, you'll cross over to the other side. And ghosts are people that have unfinished business, and they're trapped here. This is the common ghost theory that these the most paranormal people hold on to. But you think about that for a minute. Who dies with everything in order?
No one.
Nobody.
Nobody does.
I know.
I'm
Everybody
fine.
has unfinished business. Everybody has. Nobody wants to die and has everything all wrapped up in a neat bow. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
I had the same discussion with Lorraine Warren and John Zaffis. I said, they're Catholics and they're friends of mine. And I said, you guys are Christians. I said, John, I said, me and John have been friends, and Trent have been friends for years. He's been a friend of the show since we started. But we said, John, what? You're Catholic. I said, well, how do you explain these ghosts? You either die, you go to heaven, or you go to hell. And his view as a Catholic is, these are people that are trapped in purgatory.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
Now, this is going to be controversial.
Sure.
And I haven't really talked about it on any radio show, but since we're right at the end here, I'm going to drop this bomb on you.
Yeah, light it up.
All right? And I discuss this heavily in my book, and there's even an appendix that deals with this. All right, so I thought about this problem quite a bit. I don't think that all ghosts are demons, okay? I think that's one of those answers that we've given people for a long time that fails to account for all the evidence, okay?
That used to be my
cite
theory.
several accounts of ghosts that appear to Christians that are Christians. The ghost of C.S. Lewis appeared to a Bible scholar, J.B. Phillips, and encouraged him to complete a Bible translation that he was getting tired of working on. C.S. Lewis appeared to him the day after he died and said, J.B., it's not as hard as you think.
Wow.
Take it easy.
C.S. Lewis appears, and J.B. Phillips wrote about this. He's a Christian Bible scholar. He says, I saw C.S. Lewis appeared in my living room the day after he died, fully clothed, looked just like himself, and told me it wasn't as hard as I thought to keep going.
Well, Jimmy Carter saw Jesus in his living room, though, right? I mean,
sorry, I had to go there.
That's one case that kind of blows the lid off. They're all demons, I think. But here's the bomb. Here's the bombshell. Now, in my research on this topic, I read some heavy-duty biblical scholarship. One of the guys that I read, the word daemon in Greek, all right? If you go back to the origins of how this term was used, the ancient Greeks used it. It referred to gods. It referred to human ghosts. It referred to almost any kind of spirit being. It's kind of like the Elohim in Hebrew, but most people in the common vernacular in Koine Greek, around the time that the Gospels were written, when you use the word daemon, they thought of a human ghost. That was the way most people understood that word. So quite literally, a lot of people that read Mark's Gospel, when they saw the word that we see as demon and we think it's this evil being, most people in the day when Mark wrote that would have assumed that they were talking about ghosts, the way that we use the term ghost. Oh. That was a really commonly understood definition in the first century. I'm not saying that demons are ghosts, but I'm saying it's a live possibility. It's within the semantic range of the word. Now, if you look at the way the early church fathers wrote about it, they seem to be open to the idea that some people, that some demons were the spirits of evil people. Okay? Right. Now, this is one of the areas where I said it's going to be really controversial because typically, our theology, we want to have these neat boxes. Everyone dies, they go instantly to heaven or hell. But if you look at the descriptions in the New Testament, it really talks about Hades. Hell, the eternal lake of fire is in the book of Revelation, and it says when Jesus returns, he throws Hades into the lake of fire. So they're not the same place. You can't throw hell into hell. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with our translations is there's 3 or 4 words that all get translated to the same thing, hell. But they don't mean the same thing. There's Hades, there's Tartarus, and there's the lake of the fire, which is Gehenna. So they're not always the same place. They're always the same place, but they get lumped together. And, I don't know that it's always clear when we read an English translation, but Hades is not Gehenna. And Tartarus is like the deepest part of Hades, and that's supposedly where the fallen angels are. So they're not always the same place. Is it possible that some human beings are evil spirits that run the earth? I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I'm not saying that it's so, but there's plenty of evidence from cases that seem to suggest it. Now that's not biblical evidence, but there are. I quote an account of a Lutheran pastor, Pastor Blumhardt, who confronted a demonized girl and all kinds of evil spirits, and they all claim to be deceased humans. And it's a really interesting account, and the pastors, you'd have to read it in the book, but there's also some links that you can follow to read the whole account, but it's quite an amazing story, and it's quite believable because it doesn't seem like he had any motivation to make it up. Either demons were really putting on a ruse, or there's something to it. It seemed to be that these were deceased people that he knew. Even some of them were from his town, and they seemed to be evil spirits. Now, I'm not Catholic, and I don't believe in purgatory. So I would say that these people are going to hell, these evil spirits. But sure, part of their interim punishment might be to roam the world as a ghost. Look at our eschatology. Now, the word eschatology also means the afterlife in a theological category. Jesus doesn't really judge everyone until he returns. It talks about in Revelation 20, there's the great white throne judgment, and that's after the end times. That's after he returns, and then there's 1,000 years of peace, and then the wicked dead are raised for judgment. So there's a long interim period before they're actually thrown into the lake of fire. Now, I don't know if everybody's just sequestered in Hades or if there's some kind of access, but I think there's plenty of evidence that there is an interface between the realm of the dead and the living, and I think it shows in the Old Testament where you see the medium of Endor calls up the ghost of Samuel the prophet. That's a real ghost. It's in the Bible. There's no really way around that. That's a human ghost, and it's called up by a medium. There's other passages in Isaiah that talk about shades and voices that come up from the ground, from Sheol. And I unpack a lot of that Old Testament theology in the book. There's a whole chapter on that and on mediums. God doesn't make rules against things that are impossible. Okay? Now think about that. God does not trade in nonsense. Okay? When you go to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 18, there's all kinds of prohibitions against necromancy, against mediums, against talking to the dead. Okay? Why would God make rules about something that you couldn't do?
That makes
sense. He
sense.
made the rules because you can do them because they work.
Yep.
All right? So
That
these
makes
things
sense.
are possible, or God wouldn't have bothered to make rules against them. Does that make sense?
It does.
Sure does.
Chris, we've run up at the end of our show, but we would love to have you back sometime soon.
Yeah, really do. I love how you use ancient Greek. That's well done.
All right. Well, it's been my pleasure, guys. And the book is The Supernatural Worldview. It should be out May 15th. The website is supernaturalworldview.com.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Chris. We appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that was Cris Putnam, guys. We ran a little over, but you know how we are. We like to do crazy things, and we missed a show anyway, so whatever.
Seriously. Yeah, maverick.
Anyway, we will not be back for Easter Sunday because we'll be with our families.
Happy Easter.
But we will be back the following week.
Yep.
So we'll see you then, and have a safe one, and have a fun one, and
yeah, we're out of here like 3 Gs.
Later.
Don't wanna hear the question.